So 5.6% of people identify as internet trolls in a recent study, but why do they enjoy trolling? So there's a recent article at alternate.org that sort of dove into some of the notorious internet trolls and asked them, why is it that they do what they do? What sort of enjoyment or pleasure do they get from trolling? And they interviewed some actually really high-profile trolls like Ken M, who is hailed as the world's greatest internet troll. He told Vox, quote, that he tried to engage with people seriously and slowly realized that it was such a futile effort to try and have a rational discourse that I suddenly decided to make it as irrational as possible. So that's how he sort of devolved into being a troll. And then one of my favorite trolls, he's a Twitter troll, his name is John Hendred. He tweets at fart.
Yes.
He's a bit of a legend. And let's throw to a clip of him on HLN where he took his Twitter trolling actually to the real world. Let's take a look at this.
Do you think Snowden's actions were worth that risk?
Well, to say that he couldn't harm somebody, with what he did, like he could, absolutely he could have. But I think to cast him out, to make him invalid in society, simply because he has scissors for hands, that's so strange because, people didn't get scared until he started sculpting shrubs into dinosaur shapes and whatnot.
So obviously that is an interview with him on HLN where he is confusing Edward Snowden intentionally with Edward Scissorhands. And when he was asked about that notorious interview, he says, quote, when the HLN folks emailed me, it was a very brief email. They just said, hey, John, do you have any thoughts on Edward Snowden on Twitter? We'll have you on and we'll talk about it. He goes on to say, I do think Edward Snowden is a great guy and he should be pardoned in all these things, but I am not the person to talk about that on television. So what he did to HLN sort of led to a larger commentary on who are they bringing on these news shows? What sort of credibility are they looking for? Is it just a Twitter following? Because they really didn't seem to vet him at all. And then finally, there's Manny Schuetz, who is the founder of Modern Liberals, and he says, I use trolling because trying to get through to most right-wingers with logic is nearly impossible. I know because I was raised in a very conservative household. If you troll them and get them off their script, you can force them to do something some really interesting mental gymnastics and maybe rethink their belief systems ever so slightly. You can't knock the wall down, but you can create dozens of little cracks in it. I'm not a nasty troll, although I can be utterly vicious when dealing with alt-right and white supremacist idiots. It's worth noting he's actually had people terminated from their jobs when he's revealed things that they have said online. He thinks of himself as more of like a white hat sort of troll. And then the last one is from Matt Saccaro, and he wrote the piece, I was a libertarian internet troll, how I turned my mind around. And an interesting quote from the article I want to share with you guys and then get a reaction is, I think some trolls are just people who don't have a lot going on for them in real life, like I did. Few if any friends, unpopular, suboptimal home life, etc. So perhaps some of this comes from people looking for any kind of validation, attention they can find. Any harassment these people do could perhaps be interpreted as lashing out, although I'm not a therapist. Now, obviously, guys, we are not therapists, but I wanted to get your thoughts on troll culture and where does it originate from? Did you identify with any of these quotes? Did you think that they had any weight to them?
So, first of all, one thing we learned from this story is that Grace is not Jewish. It's Manny Shevitz.
Nailed it, guys. How could you tell? What gave it away?
Okay. And that's, of course,
and my dad is an Episcopal
nickname.
priest. I couldn't be any less Jewish, honestly.
Okay. That's, of course, a nickname that he came up with. Look, the most benign form of trolling, hard to argue with. You could argue that people are trolling Donald Trump when they make fun of him or Donald Trump Jr. Remember the Skittles thing? If 3 of these are, going to kill you, would you take a handful? And like one guy wrote back, if your dad is elected president, I'd eat the whole bowl. Okay. So that's fun. And a lot of these guys started as fun. But even for the ones that I ideologically agree with, I'm going to vote no, mostly. So let me explain. So for the guy who went on HLN, yeah, I guess you're making a point about how vapid TV is, but you might get somebody fired. And that makes me uncomfortable. I mean, it was funny, don't get me wrong, comparing Edward Snowden to Edward
Well, but the fact
Scissorhands.
that if you watch the whole clip, the anchor woman never breaks. Like she keeps feeding him the questions. Like, she's clearly not even really listening to the answers. I think somebody else is finally going, get this guy off, but she's just going through her script. And so, I see what you're saying. I think that if it's absurdist trolls and they aren't like out to destroy somebody, then yeah, I think that can be entertaining. It's the nasty, vicious, gross, like I don't ever read the comments anymore on this channel because it turns out I'm a fat faggot, so I don't need to find out from the listeners or the viewers that I am indeed a fat faggot. I know.
So, and by the way, one of the trolls that they talked to is LGBT, and she said she used to use that F word all the time in her trolling, like thinking that's even particularly more clever or something, right? Well, like that you have immunity to make fun of others because you're in their camp. Well, or perhaps you should empathize with people.
Yeah,
maybe that's the other way to go, right?
One of my heroes in all this is a woman named Alana Pierce, who was as a video game journalist, and you'll recall the whole Gamergate thing and how ugly that got. So when like little teen boys would write gross, sexist, and just violent stuff about her, she would find their mothers and send the mothers the tweets and just let that play out. And I'm like, yes, that is a work of genius.
So again, Alonso, I'm torn on that one too. And I'll
Really?
tell you what, I am. So let's go to Manny Shevitz, right? So he does a couple of things that I love. One, he says, look, I'm trying to get people to realize how absurd their talking points are. Because especially when you're dealing with the right wing, they've been programmed a whole bunch of talking points. And if you shake them off the talking points, they're like discombobulated with the world, right? So you can do this with the extremely religious too. Hey, why is it that the one tree we're not allowed to eat from is the tree of knowledge? And watch them go, right? So, and they've got their circular logic, and everybody does on whichever side, et cetera. And then, but my favorite is that he trolled Nigerian email scammers. Okay, that's awesome. So great job on that, Manny. Terrific. But when he sometimes will take their comments and instead of sending to their parents, sends it to their employers and gets them fired. Oh, even if they're racist and this and that, and I can't stand what they're saying, that really makes me super uncomfortable. I feel like, again, we're getting into the real world there, and it's because a lot of the racists, and they might be super mean online and stuff, I'd rather have a conversation with them and open their eyes rather than punish them and ruin their lives.
But here's the thing, it's not like he's hacked their phone and found out the secret racist things they're saying to their friends. This stuff is on the internet. They are sharing it with the world. And so it's like, you know what? Hey, boss, this is what your employee is sharing with the world. I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
So,
I like the make racists afraid again hats. There was a time when, like, if you were racist, you at least sort of shut up about it in public discourse. But now, thanks to Donald Trump and his ilk, nope, that all bets are off.
So, Cenk, do you think it's more okay to sort of troll public figures or politicians than it is for private figures, even if it is on a public forum like YouTube comments or on a public Reddit thread? That is off limits to you because they're private citizens. But if they're public figures of any sort, even a Leslie Jones type like we saw, that was insane trolling. Is that more okay in your eyes?
I mean, look, I guess I wouldn't. That distinction is fine. I get it. But I'm less concerned about that distinction than I am about whether you're just joking or you've taken it to a mean-spirited level, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to make jokes about me, have at it, Hoss. You'll be one of thousands, maybe millions at this point, right? And like Alonso, I understand that I'm overweight. So yeah, I got it. Go ahead, go for it, right? But when they start attacking Leslie Jones in the way that they did. Yeah, she's a public figure, but she never ran for Congress. Mm-hmm. She, you know what I'm saying? And then over the top racist, sexist, etc., trying to shred her sense of identity.
And when you're publishing,
what are you doing? Like, what's your point?
Yeah, and publishing somebody's driver's license and their naked photos from the cloud. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, that stuff is illegal.
I think
like that's a line that everyone should agree to.
Nauseating.
It doesn't matter what your politics is. If you're doxing people or you're taking stuff that's private on their computers and sharing it with the world, that's illegal. And that is totally unacceptable no matter what your ideology is.
Yeah, there are a lot of really sinister people hiding behind the label of I'm a troll. Those people were absolutely cruel and what they did was a crime and that's wrong and that isn't trolling anymore. So what I liked about this article and sort of learning a little bit more about trolls and people that have said things about me online or anyone here on this panel online, I like learning about how they see themselves and some of them view it as sort of a form of social commentary. commentary, which even if I don't like, sort of like along the lines of what you're saying, Cenk, I can identify with. You know, I can understand sort of what the intention is, even if it doesn't sort of do anything for me personally, but it's when people hide behind the label of I'm just a troll and then do something nefarious that doesn't sit well with me. And I almost feel like they should have another name, because these guys in this article, they sounded like sort of your very good, well-established troll, and they do troll things. But I think that when we talk about Leslie Jones and other, you know, the fappening when that happened and all the celebrities' photos were leaked, that's a very different story.
Totally.
Yeah, and so. Look, and maybe we're not being quote-unquote fair to the right-wing trolls here, because this is a piece written by Alternate. So they've got 2 liberal trolls and 2 trolls who used to be conservative but have now flipped, and they're looking at it from that perspective. But it's still, having given that giant caveat, resonated with me when they started talking about these guys, when one of them said, I would get so giddy if I got recognized. Like if somebody responded back to me, especially if it's a public figure. And that was like, I was literally in a basement, and I was like, my life wasn't going well. I didn't have a lot of friends. So when I got that recognition online, it felt so good, right? But to me, that helps a little bit. I probably shouldn't admit this, but a couple of trolls there have been instances where I looked at a conservative troll and thought, that was kind of funny what he said about me, right? Okay, so I got no problem with that, but I don't want to encourage them by telling them that, because then they're going to be like, all right, great.
That's at Cenk Uygur.
I know, right? So if you do it like that, and even if it's making fun of me, God bless, that's good American fun, right? But when you get to the point where you get joy out of someone else's pain, just think twice about it, because you might have gone to a dark place. And again, I don't know even if you're a right winger, is that a thing that is that a thing you're proud is a right wing ideology? Like if I can make other people feel pain, I would hope that's not what you think right wing ideology is. I would hope that you think right wing ideology is better for people than left wing ideology, right? So when you're trying to cause pain, that's when I think you need to step back for a second and go, wait a minute. Did this joke go a little too far? Am I too far in here and I don't even realize that it's a dream within a dream and the dreidel's still spinning? Right? Young Turks membership.
I can't tell you how good that feels and how good that tastes.
Find out. TYTnetwork.com/join.